Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video I am having pizza and a brownie type thing. So first off, I want to say I wasn't even planning to do pizza for this video, but I got a couple comments asking me to do Chicago deep dish pizza, and I ordered it from this place called Delfino's, and I'm not sure if I ordered it incorrectly, but it doesn't look like how Chicago deep dish pizza usually looks, so I'm sorry. I tried. It still looks really good though, so I'm still excited to eat it. But yeah, it doesn't look like with like the sauce on top. And then I made myself this, like, it's called a brownie goodie bar. So basically it's like brownies on the bottom, if you can see, and then it's a layer of buttercream frosting, and then you put peanuts on it, and then you top it off with Rice Krispies that have been mixed with melted chocolate chips and melted peanut butter. So I'm excited. So I'm just gonna start eating because I'm really hungry, but I'm also doing a conspiracy theory today, so I'll get to talking about that in a second. So I got two different kinds. This one is just regular marinara with, I put feta cheese on it, sun-dried tomatoes, and cheese. So oh my gosh. So that's what it looks like. You can see it's definitely not deep dish Chicago style, but it's still really good. So then also in today's video, like I said, I'm gonna do a conspiracy theory, and I'm gonna do it on, sorry, I'm just pulling up my notes. I was like typing notes on my phone. So I'm gonna do it about the JFK assassination, and there's a whole bunch of conspiracy theories regarding that, but based off my research, I'm just going to talk about one that I think would be the most believable, or the most, like, one that you can't disprove, because a lot of the other conspiracies, like, if you actually look into it, there's a lot of evidence that kind of refutes it. So I'm going to talk about the conspiracy that the CIA and the government were involved in the assassination of JFK. So yeah. I haven't had pizza in so long, it feels like. So good. So basically the background behind JFK's assassination is that he was the 35th president of the United States, and he hadn't officially announced his campaign for re-election for 1964, or the 1964 elections, but it was like he most likely was going to run. And so he was traveling around the states, kind of doing like an early campaign and just speaking at different states about different issues. And one important state for him to win was Texas, mostly because it's a big state, and then also because there was like a lot of political turmoil there, so he didn't have it like totally in the bag. And then this one is their Greek pizza, so it has feta, it's an olive oil base instead of marinara, and it also has spinach on it. So good. I don't know why, because I know that most pizza is supposed to have marinara or like red sauce on it, but my favorite pizza always has white sauce or like oil type stuff. I don't know why. Um, so yeah, basically he was just going to speak at 5 different cities in Texas in 2 days. And one of the cities that he made a stop at was Dallas. So he arrived at Love Field in a helicopter or an airplane, and then he, his wife, the driver of the car, and Governor Colony, who was the governor of Texas, and Governor Governor Colony's wife all left together on, I think it was like a 10-mile route to where JFK was supposed to speak at a luncheon. And at around 12:30, they drove through this place called Dealey Plaza, and that is where the assassination happened. So the official story is that the gunshots came from the 6th floor of this Texas school book depository, and that the shots were fired. All 3 shots were fired by a man named Lee Harvey Oswald, which I'm sure a lot of you know this information, but I'm just kind of repeating it in case you don't. It's literally so soft. Like, and the crust is like perfect too. It's not like too crisp or too soft. It's like crisp on the bottom, but still soft. It's just like, so good. So now I want to try the brownies. This is literally going to be a huge bite. I'm just going to take it separately. So that was the brownie part, and then this is the Rice Krispie part. It's so good. So I tried to turn it around so you guys could hopefully see more of the brownie. That is so good. So you can see the brownie and the frosting, and this is the Rice Krispie treat right here. Sorry for the banging. My neighbors randomly decided they wanted to start hammering stuff. I hope that's not too obnoxious. So anyways, as I was saying, the official story is that Lee Harvey Oswald is the sole shooter, and he was arrested a couple hours after the assassination happened, and he never confessed because he was actually assassinated by a man named Jack Ruby, but I'll get into that in a second. After the assassination happened, Lyndon B. Johnson was sworn into office within like an hour of Kennedy being assassinated, and a week later he set up a commission to investigate the assassination. And that committee was called the Warren Commission, and they deliberated for about 9 months. So the assassination happened in November of 1963, and in September of 1964 they officially released their findings. And their findings were basically just what I said, that Lee Harvey Oswald was the sole shooter, and that he and Jack Ruby, the man who killed him, were not involved in a larger conspiracy. But many people don't believe this to be true. Most Americans actually believe that JFK's assassination was part of a larger conspiracy. You know that piece is good when the crust is actually good. So basically now I'm just going to go through specific, I guess, parts of why people think that there's more to the Kennedy assassination than the government's letting on. And then I will get into the government's motive for wanting to assassinate Kennedy. So first off, many people believe that there was actually more than one shooter involved, and that although Lee Harvey Oswald may have been the shooter, that because the government was involved, there was multiple shooters because they wanted to make sure that they got the job done. So there's a lot of evidence for this, actually. So Lee Harvey Oswald would have been behind JFK when he shot him. So they had actually already passed the Texas School Book Depository. So from the sixth window, Lee Harvey Oswald was shooting at Kennedy from the back. But then the fatal shot that killed Kennedy, if you look at the footage, he was shot in the head, and he actually goes backwards. So you would think that if you were shot from behind, that you would be going forwards, not backwards. So it doesn't make sense that Lee Harvey Oswald would be the one that delivered the fatal shot. It would seem counterintuitive that you're shot from behind and you go that way. So that's one piece of evidence. There was another bullet, not the fatal shot, but another bullet went through Kennedy and then actually injured Governor Connally, who was seated in front of Kennedy in the car. And this is referred to as the magic bullet theory because this one bullet went through Kennedy's neck, through his shoulder, and then hit Governor Connally, and then went through Governor Connally into the governor's knee. For one bullet to do that is just insane, especially because the rifle that Lee Harvey Oswald used was only $20 or so, which, yes, it was in the 1960s, but still, that's not a very expensive rifle. So it just doesn't seem plausible that this one bullet could do that. So this is often referred to as the magic bullet theory. And this theory originally only came about because, so there's only about 5 seconds between when the first shot was fired and the fatal shot was fired. So, first of all, not even a really skilled shooter could get off 3 shots in 6 seconds with that rifle. And Lee Harvey Oswald was described as being a mediocre shooter when he was in the military. So it's the fact that he supposedly got off 3 shots just doesn't really make sense in that time frame. And the government realized that this was impossible. And so then they came up with the theory that there was only 2 bullets that made contact. That's how one of the bullets supposedly made its way through 2 people. Oh, and not only made its way through 2 people, but it was supposedly almost fully intact when it was recovered. Which, how a bullet goes through 2 people and into someone's leg and is almost fully intact doesn't make any sense to me, but Furthermore, Governor Connally, the driver, and John F. Kennedy's wife, Jackie Kennedy, all say that they don't think that the shots came from just one person. So Governor Connolly said that he thinks that the bullet that hit him was different from the bullet that hit JFK. So there's only supposedly 3 shots, right? The driver says that they were hit by a stream of bullets and that some bullets were coming from the front. So both people in the car, or 2 people in the car who are eyewitnesses, don't think that the bullets came from the same direction and that there was only 3 bullets involved. So basically their testimony negates what the Warren Commission found, that there was only one shooter. And then in the 1970s, there was actually a new commission that was created to reinvestigate the assassination of JFK. And this commission, which is called, let me see, what is it called? The House Select Committee on Assassinations, was created because they found out that the CIA had actually withheld information from the original Warren Commission on what had happened that day. So they were basically created because the CIA was literally lying to the commission, and they felt it was important enough to reinvestigate the murder. So continuing on the whole tangent about the not only being 3 bullets, in the 1970s, there was new technology, and basically the audio of this technology was able to decipher that possibly 4 bullets were actually fired, which there was only 3 casings found at the window where Lee Harvey Oswald was shooting, so that would mean that there had to be another shooter. And that would also back up the claims of the driver and the governor that there were shots coming from the front. So then newspaper photographs also report that pretty soon after the shooting, there were 3 homeless people, supposedly homeless people, who were arrested in a railroad car near the shooting. And the railroad car where they were arrested was actually really close to the infamous grassy knoll, which is where the shooter that would have been shooting from the front was supposedly stationed at. Although they were supposedly reported to be homeless, they were super clean shaven and well dressed. So it's also theorized that those 3 men are the shooters, and they were probably CIA agents, because why else would 3 perfectly groomed men be hanging out in a railroad car by where the shooting was? Like, that literally doesn't make any sense, especially because most people after Kennedy was shot were like hysterical and like running away and leaving, you know, like you wouldn't just like hang out in a railroad car. So yeah, it's believed that they were CIA agents who were involved in the shooting. So then the last bit of information that involves the theory that there's more than one shooter is the fact that Dr. George Berkeley, who was JFK's personal doctor and was an autopsy witness, was questioned a couple years later about whether or not he thought there was only one bullet or shooter involved. And he said, quote, "I would not care to be quoted on that, but why wouldn't he just agree?" It's basically like saying, I'm not going to answer, but I'm still answering at the same time, because if I thought there was just one shooter, it'd be way easier to say that. Furthermore, even though he was an autopsy witness and was Kennedy's personal doctor, he was never asked or interviewed by the Warren Commission in their 9 months of investigation, which you would think the doctor who was on scene when Kennedy's autopsy was being done, you would think they would ask him, like, what do you think about the bullet wounds? Like, but even though it's surprising that Dr. Berkeley wasn't interviewed by the Warren Commission, it's also not surprising because a man named Alan Dulles, which he was the former head of the CIA, was a member of the Warren Commission. So, a man who works for the agency that many believe to be responsible for killing JFK is the head of a commission that is supposed to be investigating it. I wonder why they wouldn't want to interview the doctor. So now I'm going to cover why the CIA would want to kill Kennedy. So the basic reason is that the agency was not a fan of the president's stances on communism and Cuba. So at this time, the United States was going through the Cold War, and we were really worried that communism would spread. And the tactic that a lot of, especially government officials, wanted to use was basically be as strong and menacing as possible and show that communism can't beat us. So when Kennedy entered office, he was originally a proponent of a stronger line against Fidel Castro and communism in Cuba. And Fidel Castro at the time was the president of communist Cuba. And so yeah, when Kennedy entered office, he was basically on the same side as the CIA, and he thought that the best way to handle it was to kind of strong arm them. But this all changed with the Bay of Pigs. And the Bay of Pigs basically a failed government overthrow. So basically what happened is that there was a whole bunch of exiles from Cuba that fled when Fidel Castro became president. And they fled to the United States, and then the CIA trained them. And the plan was to send them back to Cuba, and then the exiles would be well trained enough, and then they would try to overthrow the Cuban government. And the hope was that the Cuban citizens would take the side of the exiles and fight the Cuban government with the exiles. But basically the Cuban government found out about this plan, and a lot of the exiles were just either killed or captured. So in the Bay of Pigs, Kennedy canceled the second set of airstrikes that were supposed to go in and help the exiles. And so the CIA was mad at Kennedy for this. And so they were mad at him because he basically, in their eyes, made America look weak. And then he, although he accepted the blame for the failed operation publicly, he privately blamed the CIA for the failed operation, and made the director, who was the head of the Warren Commission, resign. So basically, it was kind of like a blame game between Kennedy and the CIA about who was kind of at fault for the operation or the failed operation. So this also kind of changed Kennedy's, I guess, stance on how to deal with communism and basically foreign affairs. So, for example, the speech that Kennedy was supposed to deliver in Dallas was eventually recovered, and because he would obviously write out the speeches beforehand, and to kind of highlight the fact that he had changed his mind about how to handle foreign affairs. In the speech, it is quoted that he said, or he was going to say, he wanted to talk about other kinds of strength in foreign affairs, and that we should be fighting communism in other ways and using other kinds of strength aside from military strength. Probably piss off a lot of people. First off, because the CIA didn't want to be perceived as weak, and second off, because with the military-industrial complex, which is basically the fact that the United States makes a ton of money from war and fighting other countries because of the amount of money it costs to build weapons and all that kind of stuff, it would likely piss off a lot of powerful people that he was basically speaking out against war. I can't get over how good this is. It's like so rich, but oh my gosh. Like, the brownie is just everything. Although this pie seems easy to make, and it was pretty easy to make, the brownies took literally 2.5 hours to cook because my oven is so shitty. So yeah, it literally took like triple the amount of time it was supposed to. I was researching for this, and I was like obsessively checking the oven because I knew it was going to be one of those things where the second I don't check for like 15 minutes, they burn. But yeah, it ended up being okay, but I was just like, oh my god. So the theory also goes that the CIA chose Lee Harvey Oswald as the shooter, or as one of the shooters, because he was an easy scapegoat. And he even said, Lee Harvey Oswald, when he was being led by police to, like, after his arrest, he even said that he was just a patsy. When the press was asking him, they were like, did you shoot JFK? And he was like, no, I'm just a patsy. Which, why would you say that? Like, why would you shoot the president? And then, like, you would think that'd be kind of something that an egotistical person would do, almost. And then he didn't take credit for it. That just seems kind of counterintuitive. So yeah, basically, it's believed that he was chosen by the CIA because he had former Soviet ties. So he actually lived in Russia for a couple years prior to the assassination. And then a couple months prior to the assassination, he was in Mexico City visiting the Russian and Cuban embassies. So it's an easy scapegoat because it's easy for the U.S. government to say, oh, look, it's communism. He was communist. He's obviously against democracy. That's why he killed Kennedy, instead of him actually being hired by the CIA. And this kind of goes in with the fact that Jack Ruby killed Lee Harvey Oswald because Jack Ruby was a local nightclub owner, and he had mafia ties. Jack Ruby was hired by the CIA because at the time when the mafia was really big and really prevalent in America, it was common for the government to hire mafia members to perform hits so that, or kill people basically, so that it wouldn't be on government hands. And so because Jack Ruby had mafia ties, it's believed that the CIA also hired Jack Ruby to kill Lee Harvey Oswald because they didn't want Lee Harvey Oswald to speak about or basically leak any information. Which I also find believable because it could easily be one of those things where the CIA is like, hey, we'll look the other way about your organized crime if you do this favor for us. And I feel like to mafia members it would be nothing. They probably kill people all the time, you know, like killing some random Lee Harvey Oswald man wouldn't really be anything to them. So I can totally see that happening. So let me see if there's any. So then there's always like little bits of information that I can't seamlessly work into my storytelling. So I'm just looking at my notes to see if there's anything else that I missed. Oh, JFK was quoted as saying that he wanted to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds. So that kind of goes with the fact that the CIA and him weren't on good terms. Oh, and this is interesting. So Bobby Kennedy, who was JFK's brother, I guess when he first found out about the fact that his brother had been assassinated, his first instinct was to say that it was he called it a rogue element in the CIA. So JFK's brother's first guess as to who killed his brother was that it was the CIA. Just a couple years later, I'm sure many of you know, Bobby Kennedy was actually assassinated himself, so and then I guess the last bit of information that I didn't add in was that there's this JFK expert named Dave Perry. And then he said that out of all the conspiracy theories surrounding JFK, that the conspiracy theory that the CIA was involved is one that he just can't disprove. Just because there's so much information that points to the fact that the CIA could be involved. So I'm going to take one more bite of this, and then I'm going to be done because I'm getting kind of full. So one more big bite. So that is all for my conspiracy theory. I'm pretty full, so that's all the food I'm going to eat. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. I know you guys had really been wanting to see another conspiracy theory, so I hope you guys enjoyed this one. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I will see you in my next video.